Hey, beautiful people. So, the guys over at the Biased BS podcast had me on recently, and I will be honest, they threw me a complete curveball. They asked me what I thought about NASA using green screens, and I kind of dodged it. Not on purpose, I really didn't know this whole conspiracy thing floating around online, so I danced around it.
NASA, a lot of people say it's kind of like a conspiracy,
Mm-hmm.
and you see a lot of green screens being used and
Yeah.
stuff like that. What would you say to that? What's your opinion on NASA?
I mean, I've heard that, and I think the problem is, I mean, I think that, I think that what they say is generally right. I don't think the Earth is flat or anything, but the problem is they've done themselves some disservices in the past. I think, where, like, for example, they alter the color of a lot of pictures of Mars.
Right.
All right, quick interruption here. So let's talk about color for a second. Not the dress. We're going to leave that in 2015. But we're going to talk about something even more controversial, perhaps, and that's NASA and their color choices. And this is one that's actually always sort of baffled me a little bit. So, but first, let's just talk about how our eyes work. Right? They're basically fleshy little light projectors. Light bounces off of stuff, it hits our retina, and our brain interprets that using our little color cones, red, green, and blue. But this is the thing, not all animals see the same thing. So a butterfly can see an ultraviolet, and a mantis shrimp has way more color cones than us and can see basically exponentially more colors than us that we can't even really imagine. So when people ask what does Mars look like, it's a bit of a loaded question, and it sort of depends on who's asking. So that brings me to this image here of the Curiosity rover. Um, so we have three different versions of the same scene on Mars. The left here is the raw, unprocessed color as it's received directly from Mars. The center is an estimate of natural color that humans would see if they visited Mars. And the right shows white balancing, which interprets it as if it were viewed under Earth-like conditions. And if you're wondering what that means, join the club. I don't really think that they word it very great. Mars doesn't have Earth-like lighting. It's Mars. That's like saying I'm going to take a picture of my house and show it under sunlit conditions. It's just something that wouldn't happen. So, what does pizza taste like underwater? But I don't think it's deception. It's just calibration, and the language is a little bit muddy. So I would really recommend reading this entire article from the Planetary Society. I'll link it in the description if you want to know more. But they do a good job of describing here, like, this is what the Horsehead Nebula looks like from Hubble when it's, a very long exposure and it's multiplying the light. You can see all this gas and plasma. But if you were to actually fly up to it, it would look more like this. Your eyes aren't really going to see all that plasma and stuff because it's the long exposure time and the magnification of the light that telescopes do that allows us to see all of that, right? And so they explain that in this paragraph here. And this is just another example of how the Hubble is able to catch all of this stuff that's up to 13.2 billion light years away because it has over 2 million seconds of exposure time on this one area, right? So every single time there's a little flicker, it's capturing that over and over and over and getting a more detailed view of it, right? So it's just something interesting. And this is a good example of a picture of Earth, where this is the top of Everest. And just goes to show you that, even on Earth, we have all different colors that kind of happen all the time, right? Depending on conditions, time of day, if you're next to an ocean, if you're over mountains, et cetera, right? And then this is another one where it says, this is a valley. The top image is how you might see it if you're standing there. And the bottom image is white balanced to show the inherent color. And so to me, it seems like when you look at more newer images of Mars, you will see that the rocks actually look more gray, and that the sky looks more gray as well, and grayish blue. And you can almost say that in some of these more recent images of Mars, that they almost look a little bit more Earth-like, which is very interesting to me. So just to kind of wrap it up, like I said, I really would ask you to read that whole article if you're interested. But this is just another example here of the Hubble versus the JWST, right? Where the JWST uses infrared to be able to really pierce through some of this cloud and dust. So looking at things in different wavelengths is going to give us a different image. So I think that can be really confusing to people, and that's why a lot of times people think that images are faked. But what do you think? Are they lying to us? Are they just working with tools in physics that most of us just don't really understand? Let me know what you think. Is this just how photography works? Is it more complicated than the average person thinks? All right, now let's get back to the podcast, and then we are going to really get into the meat of it, and that's NASA using green screens or blue screens, and do they just completely fake things? All right, that's good.
Mars.
Right.
Most rocks on Mars look a lot more gray.
Okay.
And there are red rocks on it, and compared to Earth, they are reddish. But it's like when you're actually on Mars, the sky actually kind of looks, when you look at the unaltered photos, the sky looks gray with like a very hint of blue. And it looks
kind of
almost
like a rain sky.
It looks more
almost.
Earth-like, sort of, than the pictures do. And it's sort of, and I always ask myself, and then there are some photos that they alter the color on purpose, right? Like there's really awesome new pictures of Jupiter where, they're using like infrared, or they're using ultraviolet, or they're using different wavelengths and spectrums so that they can penetrate through the clouds and see more.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks totally unrealistic. And so you see a lot of people on Facebook like, oh, that's CGI, that's AI, especially with all the AI art and stuff now. And it's hard to tell the difference. And it's like, so I think the fact that NASA does, and they admit that they edit a lot of their photos. It's not really like a secret or anything, but that did always kind of bother me like a little bit. But no, I mean, I don't think that they're like making fake pictures of the ISS and curving the Earth because it's actually flat or whatever.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. So there's all those like firmament, the firmament theories and all that. There's a lot of crazy theories out there.
All right, so let's wrap this up and talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the question that they really asked me, which is, why does NASA use green screens? So let's talk about specifically this clip that you're seeing now. So this is Tim Peake. He's an astronaut with the ESA, the European Space Agency. And on the big monitor, you can see he's in front of a blue and white grid. And a lot of people took this image and ran with it and said that they thought it was like a green screen or a chroma key. But what it actually is it's a blue and white calibration grid. So it's a backdrop inside of the ISS, and what they use it for is for physics demonstrations and motion tracking. So essentially when astronauts do experiments, the grid gives scientists on the ground a way to analyze how things are floating, spinning, and moving in microgravity. So it's basically like just really advanced graph paper. And yes, NASA does use green screens sometimes, but not in a way that folks think. They use them for media purposes or educational videos, commercials, training simulations here on Earth. Keep in mind they are a massive organization, so they do a lot of media and training and other things besides just direct imaging of planets. So their official media guidelines even say that commercial shoots aren't allowed aboard the ISS or NASA centers unless they meet very strict rules, and no commercial branding can ever imply a NASA endorsement. So when rumors started flying around, a NASA spokesperson actually came right out and said at no time have props, green screens, wires, or simulated underwater facilities substituted for actual real-time operations in a space station. Now, another thing I've seen on Facebook a lot is just these, what seem to be doctored images of the ISS just like out in the desert in front of a green screen. I haven't been able to verify that, but from what I can tell, it looks like it's doctored in some sort of way, or maybe even completely AI. But let me know if you've seen this image. Let me know what you think about it. And like I said, just let me know what you think about all of this in general. I am telling you, essentially, this is what NASA's official answers are. However, it's up to you to make up your mind for what you think. So let me know in the comments, is NASA just kind of full of it? Are they just saying a bunch of confusing stuff to make it complicated for normal people to understand? Or, like I said, are people just, do people just want to believe conspiracies sometimes. And I know I definitely fall in that camp occasionally. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out the Biased BS podcast. This full episode will be linked in the description. Take care. Bye.